Hey everyone, and welcome to the Marketing Times Analytics Podcast. I'm Alex Safranis, your host, and today I'm sitting down with Ainul. Would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Ainul Huda, and currently I'm the Global Vice President for Audience Development, Analytics, and Social for Condé Nast. For many of you who don't know, Condé Nast is a global media company. We own rich brands like Vogue, New Yorker, Wired, Vanity Fair, Glamour, GQ, so on and so forth. And I've been in the company for the last 3.5 years, focused on audience growth, engagement, and loyalty, and really do that with a data-driven lens. And yeah, I've been in the industry for a while. Prior to this, I was at WeWork running their data and analytics organization, and I've worked with Verizon Media running performance marketing. And in previously, I also functioned as a data engineer. So it's really my career has been a function of analytics, marketing, and strategy.
That's the kind of the career path I'm looking for. So I'm really glad to sit down with you today. And I think I'd like to start with more of uh, a bigger picture question about you've had a career in marketing and data. What are the advantages of a career in marketing, and what are some of the disadvantages?
I mean, in this new age, I think marketing is a lot more sophisticated and nuanced than the traditional sense we define marketing. Let's say if you go a few decades back, a lot of marketing was about you create a product and then you find ways to go and get your consumers and distribute that and get the maximum buck out of it. But increasingly, marketing as a function is seen as a great connector between various functions. It also helps enable you to define what a product is, and being a marketeer where you're so close to your consumers, it almost forces you to be more data savvy, to be successful in today's age. And having this holistic point of view really allows you to drive huge impact to the company, and also gives an individual to capability to move other streams of career. Like it could be you could go into sales, you could go into product, or in many cases I've seen various marketeers become extremely successful, becoming CEOs and so on, because they really understand the entire journey from end to end, understands the market, understands the consumer, and understands your product. So I think there's a tremendous um, potential being a smart marketeer in today's age, and I just hope that everybody takes advantage of this potential.
Yeah, I think one thing I noticed even from your background and into the answer of your question was a focus on audience and understanding who is the audience that we're marketing to, and how can we improve the experience as our audience in I guess experiences the product or service, and that is such a transferable skill. It's really important that CEOs understand what it's like to be a consumer of the company. Um, I remember reading once about Jeff Bezos calling Amazon customer service in the middle of a board meeting, and he was, it was to prove a point about, um, you know, I think they had to shorten wait times or something. But being close to the customer experience and trying to put yourself in their shoes, I think, is really important if you want that seamless customer experience. So that's a great point that you touched on. What about some disadvantages about a career in marketing?
So I mean, probably it's not a disadvantage, but it boils down to what you make out of it. So if you are a marketeer who is very siloed in their own department, as primarily thinking about downstream effect post product development, product creation, perhaps you'll be successful initially, but in the long run, it may become difficult. So I don't see that as a disadvantage being the function, but what you make out of it. So marketeers who are really very data savvy and also has a product mindset and is able to uh, be part of the product inception creation with your partners within product development, or in some cases it could be editorial in the media industry and so on. I think that's where you stand to succeed, and if you don't do that, most likely you'll not be as successful. But I do not see any glaring downside to being a marketeer.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really flexible position, so it's really what you make out of it, and it's not so technical that you really can't switch industries. So I totally agree.
Increasingly, I think marketing is a huge area of investment, no matter which way you look into. Even if you think about companies like Adobe, who have traditionally been more focused as a software, but as a software company and so on. But right now, if you think about the focus, it's all about marketing, the how to enable marketing, how to enable companies to become more efficient with spending their dollars. And increasingly, marketeers has become like more savvy, even from a financial perspective. So you would see, like generally, marketeers who are successful are also extremely savvy in their conversation with the CFOs. So if at all, I see this as like being a tremendous opportunity for people who are growing in this career track to be a great connector between different functions of a company.
Definitely. And you brought up a really interesting point. You have to tie marketing to results. And in the past, I think it was probably much more difficult to quantify the results of marketing. You might have had like a promotional code that's only on the subway or something that you could maybe use to tie to certain deals. But generally, it was probably a lot harder, 10, 20, 40 years ago to really justify the expense of marketing. And I think today it's much easier. I can look in Google and tell how many orders I'm getting, from a certain keyword search that I'm bidding on. And so the ROI is much easier to track. And I think that it's no coincidence that we're seeing greater investment in marketing because it's easier to prove the value that it's bringing.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, I think probably it's getting even more sophisticated. I think it has been for a while, but it's proliferating even more. Where even when you think about investing in Google search, but I think through marketing analytics, people are also thinking about, like, if I'm investing in brand campaigns, things like if I put an ad on TV, which is not very easy to track to your direct orders, but how can I think about my investment holistically? And very often you'll hear analytics or marketing folks talking about multi-touch attribution model. So
Hmm.
like, could I look into my investment holistically versus the last touch, which could be through a Facebook or Google, so that I can really allocate my dollars in a very efficient manner.
Absolutely. So we talked about some of the advantages and disadvantages of a career in marketing, but as far as the different career places or the places you can go, we touched on sort of being the leader of a company, understanding the customer experience. Where are some of the other places that you can go with a skill set in marketing analytics?
Being particular to marketing analytics, it does open up a whole set of new doors. I mean, like, immediately that something comes to your mind that you can end up deciding to be a marketer directly versus being the marketing analytics individual, right? Because just because you understand the data set so well and you understand what works or what really doesn't work, and if that's a passion where you want to be more involved from a strategy and operation perspective, so I think even going to classical marketing is a great potential. And obviously, uh, I think in the last decade or so, you will see a lot of analytics folks are also being seen as growth marketeers, or has become gone on to become successful CMOs. I mean, like, I think one of the recent examples I had seen that really gave me like a pause, and I think it was exciting when I think the newly appointed CMO of Facebook, Alex Charles. I think he started his career as an analytics individual, and he
Hmm.
used to run the growth team. And right now, he is the CMO of Facebook. So I think that is telling how the industry is moving, and probably will have to move, where every decision you make as a marketeer informs value creation.
Yeah.
So like, that's one option. I mean, again, I think marketing analytics could be a great foundational skill to going in that direction. But you could also decide to be like to get more technical if you want to become, like, continue in the path and become a data scientist, or you want to become a chief data or a chief analytics officer. Just being a marketing analytics individual gives you the understanding of the whole ecosystem and spectrum. It does open up unlock a lot of doors. And I've also seen people who just have gone on and just become good general managers, or probably even chief operating officers, just because they understand all the physics behind how a company works, and what are the levers you have to dial in or dial down.
Definitely. Yeah. Having that skill set in analytics is crucial nowadays because we have so much data around us. It's really important to know how to read it and digest it. And I heard something recently that a lot of CEOs were accountants in the past. And I was kind of thinking about like what would be the reasoning for that, and it's because accountants input a lot of data. They read a lot of numbers. They have to understand kind of like what's going on, but looking at an extremely fine level of detail and then extrapolating. And that's a very similar skill to what an analyst would do. You have a lot of data that you could possibly look at, and you have to pull out what's important and draw, conclusions about how the general business is doing. And so I think that they're really similar in a way, in terms of the value that they both of those skill sets teach you in a business.
Like that's fascinating, and in fact that's true. In fact, when I go back to my business school days, I did see the trends when we were reading about various CEOs and C-suite that have started their career as accountants, and it was with the fact that they had a very nuanced understanding of the numbers, was very detail oriented. So I think you could say it's a very similar team with analysts, and yeah, so I think it's fascinating how some of the same themes comes up, keeps coming back.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to move on to this is kind of my favorite question, which is, when you run a marketing analytics organization, you need to justify, what the value that you're bringing in is. And so my question is, what KPIs do you use, and generally, what is the value to the organization, both tangible and intangible, that marketing analytics can bring?
I think probably in terms of in terms of any analytics function, be it marketing or product disciplines, it starts with able to define even the goals for the group you're serving well. So I think even before you provide a KPI for your own analytics group, one of the key function that any analytics team could do is help define success for the team that you're serving. So so in this case, um, if you are serving an marketing organization, like are you able to cleanly talk about, like, here are the top 4 to 5 KPIs that really allows you to meet your overall objectives, that these are not vanity metrics, that these are flexible metrics and these are tangible metrics, and the team's ability to really provide tangible uh, strategies in how you can achieve that by working with different parts of the teams and being really close to the partners and to your business stakeholders are key. So in this case, I will not even talk about specific KPIs, but overall, if you can convince your partners that you are there to drive both your top line and bottom line, and your analysis help achieve that, I think that is the number one thing in achieving trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, once you have that, once you build a trust factor and trust component, where your stakeholder sees you not as a service provider but as a growth partner, where where both the analytics team and the marketing organization can come together, like, to deliver a common outcome, automatically you'll see that all the analysts are bought into any kind of conversation to strategies much earlier in the discussion, versus just being at the end and saying, hey, can you just pull some numbers for me, versus and then that will, and probably I think that is an intangible, is that is really is very key. And then over time, you can come up with your own metrics, like, hey, like, did I send 5 reports that drove huge value, and those things are great. I mean, you can say how many hours did I save for a company by providing this guidance, and it really depends on the business model. But the key point is that your stakeholders should have trust in you, and they should understand that the team is in it together, and seen more as a growth partner versus a service provider.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I was expecting more KPIs, but I think from your perspective, in the role that you have, it's much more of a relationship between the organizations that matters. That your goals are aligned with their goals, and you have sort of the field that you compete in, which is a lot online with the different advertisers, and probably also a lot in print and physical advertising, and you're kind of the arm that is, you have the same goals. You also want growth at the top and bottom line, but you have sort of your own avenues that you're going to take, and then the business takes their avenues. Maybe they're doing sales and things like that. So and that trust that the organizations are working in tandem with the same goals is what's really important.
Correct. So the way I would think about it, like my analytics team, my analytics particularly team, their goal is to, I mean, their KPIs. How do you make sure your stakeholders reaches their KPI?
Mm-hmm.
So it's more about overall business KPI and how you can help achieve that, versus purely thinking from a perspective of saying that, okay, how many reports did I send out, or how many hours did I save? Those are great as diagnostic metric, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't measure those, but ultimately none of it matters unless you really drive value to the business, and many of it comes in the form of trust and the partnership and all those intangible component, where the business sees analytics as a as a key pillar to drive success.
Definitely. Um, this is this kind of came up. You mentioned the term vanity metrics. Could you go into that a little bit more?
Sure, absolutely. So I think often what happens, like, as organization, we start measuring things, but and we have a perception that what is a valuable metric, and it could be depending on the various industries. You could measure some metrics which may look great, but ultimately, how do you prove out that if you move that metrics towards like higher, does it really drive your overall company success in terms of consumer growth, revenue, and so on? So let me give you an example. When social media became I mean, social media has been in a society for a while now,
Mm-hmm.
but over the last few uh, over the last decade or so, it has really become a part of a day to day for businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes people will say, okay, fine, we have so many followers, or we have got so many likes, we have got so many comments, or so many impression. Now, depending on the business model, unless we have really proven causality or correlation, how growing a particular social metric really drives your business model, then it turns out to be a vanity metric, because then you'll spend time chasing a metric that may or may not drive your overall business objective.
Mm-hmm.
So I really encourage various teams, be it analytics, be it marketing and product, is to really have a very unbiased, objective, data-driven approach, where you can run analysis to show that if I move this metric to the north, does my overall consumer growth, consumer engagement, or even my top line or bottom line moves? If it doesn't, that to me is a vanity metrics to be chasing. It's okay to have as a diagnostic metric just to get a gut check, but perhaps it shouldn't be qualified as a top level KPI.
I totally understand. For example, if you are a B2B company and you're selling, servers or something, and you have advertising on some social media platform and you're getting tons and tons of impressions, that might not matter as much as engagement. So like how many people share, that content that you're posting, divided by how many people saw it. So maybe like some sort of a conversion metric would be far better than just like a volume metric, which could,
Exactly.
yeah, and that could be blown up by targeting the wrong people. Maybe maybe you're targeting people who are interested in how the servers look, but they're not actually in the market for them, or something like that. And yeah, I totally understand you there from an analyst perspective.
Yep. And like this is something that is very close to my heart in general, that like spending the necessary time just to making sure that we get the metrics right. And I think it goes back to your earlier question, what should be a KPI for an analyst? Well, the KPI for an analyst could be perhaps defining a good KPI for the business.
That's a good point. Yeah, if you're a good analyst, then that would mark a good analyst. If you could come up with a really good KPI for the business, for sure.
Right.
Cool. All right. Well, those were all the questions I had. I really appreciate your time, I know, and I would love to have you again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alice. It was great talking to you.
Great. Okay. And thank you everybody for listening. Cheers.